Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Epic Vision Zone. My name is Jane Applegath, a former award-winning stockbroker, television producer, scriptwriter, yoga instructor, and serial entrepreneur, now founder of the Epic Vision Zone. I'm here to help you fulfill your dream's big vision, grow the power of your voice, and achieve the impact you're meant to have on the world. Because what you say and why you say it is the key to influencing more people, growing financially free, and living a more abundant and joyful life. Here at the Epic Vision Zone, we bring you some of the world's most influential people to inspire you to hit the go button on your epic life. A big thank you for joining us here today. Conventional wisdom says that emotions have no place in business or leadership. Our guest today will tell you that that is a fallacy. Leadership expert, activist, and executive coach Reiner Lomb knows that to address the issues of our time, we need to come together and collaborate. Reiner is the founder of Boomerang Coach, an executive leadership and career development firm specializing in transformational change. Reiner's mission is to mobilize and develop innovative leaders who will create a more sustainable and positive future by showing us how to come together and collaborate to create a vision for a new aspirational future. With a 30-year career in technology, starting and growing software companies, forging leadership and development, Reiner works with changemakers in startups and multinationals, nonprofits, local communities, entrepreneurs, and much more to create positive change. Today, Reiner is here to offer wisdom from his new and very exciting book, Aspire: 7 Essential Emotions for Leading Positive Change, no matter where you are. Welcome, Reiner. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you, Jane. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I am so excited to get into this topic. I have to say, I am a big fan already. I have looked through the book, and the timing of this is so essential. So let's get right into it. Tell us about your background and what brought you to your work as an executive and leadership coach, speaker, and author.
Thank you for that question, Jane. My background is like on the business side. I've been both an intrapreneur and an entrepreneur. Intrapreneur, explaining it's somebody that starts businesses within a corporation. I worked more than 24 years for Hewlett Packard, where I helped to start HP software business and helped to grow it into a multi-billion-dollar business over more than 2 decades. I also grew up in Germany when Germany was divided in East and West, and my hometown is close to the border to East Germany. So I grew up in a divided country, and I'm now here in the US. I have been living here for nearly 3 decades, and again I'm living in a divided country. Only difference, we are not divided by walls of bricks. We are divided by emotions such as resentment, fear, and even sadly hatred, as we have seen just a few days ago in Buffalo, and it's happening again and again. So I really, my background made me sensitive to these divisions, and we have huge challenges in the world that such as climate change, racial and social inequalities that are widening, pandemics, and other big issues that threaten the future of our children. I have children myself. I have a grandson as well, but I care about, honestly, I care about all children. I have empathy for the future generations. And the issue with why division is an issue, why this division through emotions is an issue, is really that we cannot work together on these big issues. But if we would come together, we could overcome those issues. I have studied sustainability as well as solutions in software and so on. So I have a very broad background and have studied the issues. I think we can overcome those issues. We have solutions. We just need to come together.
Yes, absolutely. You write that anybody can lead positive change. no matter where they are. So tell us more about how you know this to be true.
That is an excellent question. Thank you for asking that, because many people don't believe that they can create change. Many people
Mm.
uh, are frustrated about something, something they deeply care about, but are not able to do something about it. And it's very typically it's emotional barriers that holds them back. It's maybe lack of self-confidence or beliefs in that it's too big an issue. I cannot do something about it. Let's say take the issue of climate change or racial inequality and things like that. Say this is too big for me to bite. My experience is, and this comes from the diverse background that I have. I grew up in a village, in a family with small family businesses, where every day I saw people making a difference. Now, this was a much smaller environment, villages and small towns, and so you could actually see. I could see as a child growing up how people made a difference in other people's life every day. Now, I took this into the corporate world. In my leadership roles, in let's say at Hewlett Packard and so on, I acted as if this was a family business. If this was my business, that the people were my family that would work for me on my team, my peers, my bosses, and so on. My partners that I worked with around the world in Asia, in Latin America, in North America, in Europe, and so on. I treated them like I was brought up in a family business. So back to your question about how do I know that anybody can make a difference? First of all, I experienced it myself. If there was something I wanted to change, like starting a software business, or I was also an activist when I lived in Colorado for nearly 20 years in climate change at a local level, we can learn. So we can learn to create change by influencing the behavior of others.
Mm.
But we need to know who are the key stakeholders we want to serve, who we want to create the change for, who are the ones that we want to benefit from the change. And people very often think very big and say the issues are too big. But if we break it down into smaller issues, let's say if we take climate change at a local level, at a local community, like I did in Colorado, a city of Fort Collins, 130,000 people, then suddenly it becomes manageable. Suddenly
Mm.
you can identify who are the key stakeholders I need to work with. What is my vision for the city to create a sustainable city? And who do I need to influence, and how do I need to influence them to change their behavior? And in order to do that, how do I need to change my behavior? The same with starting a software business too. I started small. I had a vision, but I started small and then day by day working and influencing people. So in different parts of my life and over my career, and now as an executive coach too, I see actually the leaders that I'm coaching, how I can coach them to change their behavior, to become very conscious in order to change others' behaviors, being it their boss, being it their team members, their clients, and so on, and create change that way, slowly expanding the circle of influence they have step by step.
That was magnificent, Reiner. Absolutely. I got so many takeaways from that. I love your philosophy of treating your business team as family. That is that is a wow. I mean, if we could just go in with that mindset in every sense of the word, it completely shifts your perspective. Completely shifts your perspective. And you're right, take a bite of you want to take a piece of the pie. You know, they say the journey of a thousand I'll get it wrong, but it starts with one step. And so everyone can make a difference, and that influence spreads like dominoes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love that, because that's what we're doing here on the Epic Vision Zone, is sharing the knowledge, sharing the inspiration, and sharing the resources for people who are wanting to grow, are wanting to learn, and wanting to be inspired. So that was just absolutely perfect. Thank you so much. Getting on to your book, give us a brief synopsis of your book, Aspire, and it's why it was, why you wrote it, and the timeliness approach of what's required to lead today.
Yeah. So let me break it down in two parts. One is why I wrote it, and second, what it is about. What are the basic ideas, the most important ideas. Why I wrote it is really, I believe we need the state in which we are in the world, and that's true for our society as well as our, like, at a community level, and at a national and at a global level, as well as within organizations. From my observation in coaching leaders, in observing the world, and the challenges we are facing, is we need to change the way we lead. That was, and I explained the reason before, is we are living in a divided world, divided by emotions, by things that keep us apart at the emotional level. But our challenges require us to work together. So, in order to do that, we need to create an emotional shift. So that's why I wrote Aspire. I have been trained as an ontological coach many, many years ago, and then I deepened my work, especially in the dimension of emotions. Now, ontological coaching has looks at a human being from multiple dimensions, both from a physical, as a somatic way, as well as intellectual way, and from the emotional state. But I found myself having the greatest impact in terms of creating a shift and a transformation in leaders working in the emotional space, because of that's where people are not typically have been trained and learned a lot. So that's a big leverage itself. Now let me go from the why to the what. What is in Aspire? The three basic ideas of Aspire, and to summarize them, one is anyone can change. Anyone can learn to create and lead change. Everybody can be a change maker. You don't necessarily need to be you can be a formal leader. That's helpful, but you don't have to be a formal leader. You can be an executive, a CEO. You can be a team leader, first line manager, all the way to the C level, but you don't have to. You can create change, and I have experienced that, and I see that with people that I'm coaching. If you are not a formal leader. The second is, in order to create change, in order to lead change, one needs to change behavior, influencing others to change their behavior. But first, starting with yourself, starting with myself, how do I have to change my behavior to help somebody else to change their behavior? Now, that's the second idea. The third idea is that what is a powerful driver of our behavior are the emotions, but they can also be a barrier to our behavior depending on what emotional state we are in. There are certain emotions that help us to show the leadership behavior we need in a given situation, and there are certain emotions that keep us from showing that leadership behavior. Now, if we create an emotional shift to that desired leadership behavior from the undesired one, then suddenly that behavior becomes available to us. So, give you the example of a leader must have a vision. If you talk about an epic vision in your show, I love actually the term saying, think big. I train people when I do innovation workshops, like teams, leaders, or whole organizations. Have an epic vision, have a vision, dream big, now and then break it down into small steps and how to get there. However, if you are not in the emotional state of optimism, you won't be able to look forward to an epic vision. If, let's say, resentment, which is an emotion of the past, holds you, like holds your mental energy, the stories that go through your head in something that happened to you in the past, and you are ruminating on it, it takes all the mental energy, and it keeps you emotionally and mentally from thinking about the future. That's just one example of an emotional shift that is required for somebody leading towards a future. So the third idea, basic idea of the book is that You can create change. You can show the leadership behaviors that create positive aspirational change if you learn to become aware of your emotions. You understand, is that a useful emotion for me to show the leadership behavior, demonstrate the leadership behavior I need in this moment as a leader to create change? If not, what is the emotion that I need? And learning to shift. And you can learn to shift emotions. Many people believe that emotions are automatic and I cannot do anything about it. They just come up. I just get angry when you say these things, or I just get frustrated or whatever. That's not true. You can actually learn to be aware of your emotions. You can actually learn to change your emotions. Now, this does not mean that if you have an emotion that is undesirable, it's not a valuable information. So I'm not talking about, some people talk about toxic positivity and things like that. No, every emotion is valid, has good information, but learning about, is this valuable for this, what I try to do right now? And then what is the emotion that is more helpful, and then shifting to that one. So these are the three basic ideas, basically.
Right. They're so powerful. Our human instinct is to react. Uh, but what I hear you saying is we need to pause and be aware of what that reaction is going to, how that will be brought forward, and how people will then react back to us. So yes, I completely, I can see that. And I remember reading a story in your book with reference to a manager or a leader, and she said that she couldn't get her team motivated, and then she got angry because she couldn't motivate them, and that energy actually demotivated them even more because they became frustrated and resentful. And I don't, in your book, I don't think she was realizing that was what she was doing, because she was reacting to them not working, but they were reacting to her being angry that they weren't doing. So it becomes a vicious circle. But absolutely, yes. And how you shifted that and you made her aware of it. Awareness is so key. As human beings, we all go on automatic pilot too often. So when we bring ourselves and realize the awareness and that what we're feeling and how that's going to be a change into a behavior and then feed into the rest of either the corporation, the team, even your family, it serves us in every way. It's so powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, you have a beautiful story in your book, and it's really about the fall of the Berlin Wall. And I know you spoke a little bit about that, but share with us your experience of the fall of the wall and how that story sort of you learned from it and how it was regarding in leadership.
Yeah, thank you for asking this. It's a very powerful story, because in the book I describe two dimensions of it. It's one from an individual perspective, like how there's one individual, Anke is her name. She has become a friend of mine. That's how I know about the story. She grew up in East Germany in the city of Leipzig. And then it describes also the story from a large scale change, from a larger societal change. So let me go back to 1989. In the summer of 1989, thousands of people were fleeing, East Germans were fleeing to the west. There was a route opened through Hungary, because the border got some holes, basically. The Hungarians were not as vivid in keeping the border safe. And so people found that out, and they were fleeing into the West because they were pessimistic that their demand for freedom and democracy would be answered by their government, by the East German government. Now, they had some hope because of Gorbachev's perestroika and glasnost and those policies to open up the society a little bit more. But their own government, the East German government, was still very strict. Any kind of voicing demands and going to the streets and demonstrating was beaten down with power. People were jailed and so on. And so in July, of 1989, that summer people were still very pessimistic, and Anke herself was pessimistic. She was 18 years at that time, and she one day, I think it was on July 30th, she had this inner shift to optimism, in terms of feeling optimism. If she would try to flee, that she would be successful in making it to the West. And she talked only to a friend, that both together went to Hungary on a camping trip. That's what they told their parents. They said, we're going on a camping trip. And they went there, but they went there to find a way to flee. And they waited there near the border to Yugoslavia for about 2 weeks. Every day they went to the side of the road and waited for a truck driver that would help them to get across the border. And after 2 weeks, a West German truck driver said, I will take you, and at night was hiding them under a tarpaulin on the back of the truck, driving to the border, rolling to the border, and the border guard was basically investigating with a flashlight. And she told me that the border guards were so close that she could hear their breathing, and they were holding their own breath because they were afraid that they would be discovered and then maybe jailed, and maybe something even worse happening to them. But luckily they didn't find them, and they made it across the border. And then the truck driver took them all through Yugoslavia. I think it was a 24-hour drive across the border to Greece, and then they went to the consulate, and the German consulate, West German consulate, flew them then out to West Germany and into a refugee camp. And from there on, then they built their new life in the West. Now, that was one story of a shift from pessimism to optimism, and how that made them act to create the future they aspired to. Now, at the same time, in East Germany, and specifically in the city of Leipzig, which is about 500,000 people, they were a little bit ahead in terms of driving change and demanding change than other cities. And there were two young pastors in the Nikolai Kirche. They held Monday prayers. And starting with September 4th, so this was towards the end of the summer, after the Monday prayers, starting with a handful of people, they would then, after the prayers, the peace prayers, they called them, they went out into the street and demonstrated peacefully. And that number of people was growing so rapidly from Monday to Monday, week after week, to 70,000, to over 100,000, to eventually 320,000 on October 23rd, Monday, October 23rd in Leipzig, when more people were marching the streets than were watching them from the windows. And at that point in time, because of these masses of demonstrators, each of them had become optimistic that if I do something, I can help to create change. So this is how a shift from pessimism, that I cannot make a change, to optimism, that I can make a change if I join the movement, created change. And because it was so big and they were peaceful, the police did not beat it down, because it was just too big to beat down, to stop. Right now, other cities followed, encouraged by them, and millions of people were demonstrating across the whole country. In other cities, in Berlin was probably the most visible then. And then 2.5 weeks later, after that large demonstration in Leipzig, the wall fell. And the wall fell because there was one guard, Harald Jäger is his name. He was like a supervisor that night. He was just surprised by himself. He was at the border, and government official had announced that the border would be open, but it was not true. And so they all came to the border, and his colleague said, let's get the machine guns out to stop them. But he said, no, he was the supervisor that night. He said, no, we're not going to do that. And then, long story short, at the end, he decided to open the border, and then other border guards followed, and the wall fell that night. And many people saw then the cheering crowd in Berlin, and then East and West Berliners reuniting, families, friends, ecstatic and totally celebrating, right? So that was an example of a large-scale change by changing emotions. Decades of negative emotions, of fear, of pessimism, and so on. Another example, how an emotional shift that was created, you're talking about an epic vision, that was created by an epic vision, and the epic vision was freedom, and democracy. And freedom meant freedom to travel, freedom that I can choose my own government, democracy that I can vote for the government that understands my needs and is creating a future for me that I aspire to. Right. So these were higher aspirations that drove them and took that allowed them to take the courage.
What wonderful insight, and what a beautiful story to demonstrate the power of optimism, the power of a shift in emotions, that becomes a movement, and how it demonstrates also that one person can make a difference, because our emotions are contagious. So whether it's pessimism, anger, we can see the anger today. We can see how that's contagious, unfortunately. But on the other hand, you're right. If we come together and start believing that we need to collaborate, we need to understand this. It can shift. But that was so insightful to weave that into the fact that you can change and you can make a change by just stepping out and joining. That was beautiful. Thank you. Now, the 7 essential emotions to lead. Tell us what those are and why you chose them.
Yeah, thank you for that question. This is a very that's a very good question. How did I come to those? Why did I choose them? And what are these emotions? Let me start with the why again. I shared with you that I studied ontological coaching, which is a more holistic approach to coaching, looking at the human being from a holistic human perspective, both from your somatic perspective, how you experience the world physically, how do you experience the world intellectually, rationally, with your language and with your thoughts, and but also how you experience the world emotionally. Each of these three dimensions are always kind of trying to get in alignment, and also they determine the disposition in each of those three determine how you see the world, what possibilities for actions you see, any situation you go, and shifts in any of these three dimensions can allow you to see new possibilities for actions. Now, back to the why. I went deeper into the dimension of emotions. I always work also with the somatic part. I watch a person. How is a person showing up physically? What are they saying? The language they're using and the words and so on, and so helping to create a shift there. But I saw a very powerful shift in when somebody that had never worked in the emotional space or very little, just doing a little bit changed the possibilities for that person. And so there is over 250 emotions that drive our actions, behaviors, thoughts, anything we do, we say, we act. There's no action we take that is not affected by our emotions. And they are more powerful than our rational thoughts. We can think ourselves into action, but our subconscious mind, from where the emotions are kind of a window into the subconscious mind very often, like our dreams are too, drive much more powerful how we act and what we're able to see and to do. So that's kind of the why, the power of it, and as an opportunity, a possibility for driving change, for creating change in a positive way. Now, then, of those more than 250 emotions, I both studied the academic research, but also the practical side as I was practicing. So I lead innovation workshops, transformational change workshops. I coach people to create positive change. I observe myself. I work constantly on myself as well. And then in my family context and community and so on, I distilled 7 emotional states that are especially useful to drive 7 corresponding behaviors, leadership behaviors that are absolutely essential for leading positive change. And so I built them like a pyramid, as the foundation is empathy. And especially emotional empathy allows us to care. Any leader needs to care. A leader that doesn't care we don't trust. If we believe a leader doesn't care about our needs, the stakeholder needs, the client's needs, we don't trust that leader. A leader has to care, needs to care, and emotional empathy is what drives caring. Now, caring is not enough because you can care about something, but you still might not act on it. What gets you to acting is the emotion of compassion. Feeling compassion, it gives the commitment to serve the needs of the other people, to serve, to alleviate the suffering of somebody, or to meet an important need of another person. Let's say your friend's mother dies, and so empathy, to feel with her, gets you to caring about her, but it's compassion that makes you call her and say, can I cook you a meal? Can I come by and hold you and maybe spend the night with you? That's kind of what compassion does. So the next level of to show the leadership behavior of serving, so we're talking about servant leadership, you need compassion, and that commits you to serve. Now, leaders also, if a leader wants to create an aspirational vision, a vision that meets the needs of the people, the leader needs to have needs to understand the issues. So let's say somebody wants to transform the US healthcare system, which is very complicated, right? The leader who is assigned to do that task will not be able to do that if they don't understand the complexity of it. Will also not able to do it if he not really understands the needs of the people. What are the healthcare needs that people have? Now, this is a very complex example, but that applies for any leader at, let's say, at the global level. Political leaders need to understand the financial system, the economic system. They need to understand the environmental issues that are going on, and so on and so on. So understanding, but without interest, which is the emotion that drives, that motivates us to try to understand something, people don't gain understanding. There's a wonderful example in Angela Merkel's biography that I recently read. She was always the leader among the world leaders, G7, whatever, global leaders. She showed up with the best understanding of the situation that they had to discuss. Most of the world leaders had superficial know-how. Maybe they had the experts in the back, but she always had studied up and so on. But where did that come from? It came from her deep interest to understand. She was trained as a scientist, as a researcher, and so that was just part of her nature. So interest drives understanding. So empathy, compassion, and interest build the foundation. Without that, a leader becomes very shallow. Now, we all talk about a leadership needs to be visionary, right? And we talked earlier, right, I mentioned already, in order to look into the future, to see an aspiring future, a future that inspires people, that meets the needs of the stakeholders, someone needs to be optimistic. It's a future-oriented emotion versus maybe resentment, which is an emotion that takes us backward. So need to shift to optimism. Optimism drives visioning, being able to envision a future. Now, let's say a leader shows up with a vision and say, like, let's say East Germany, freedom for everybody. Everybody says, yeah, freedom. You still have to mobilize the people to go to the street and fight for it. Now, when you're an entrepreneur, your entrepreneurial listeners have a vision of a new business. They still need to mobilize people to help with the business. This could be investors, this could be clients, this could be hiring people, this could be maybe partnerships, could be channel partners, whatever it is, maybe family members. They need to mobilize them. And the emotion that mobilizes people is inspiration. Now, many leaders try to motivate people, like using the old carrot and stick method. And many companies build their reward system according to carrot and stick, and they do performance reviews, not working very well. I have been a leader and people leader for many decades. Inspiration works, it provides sustainable driver of performance. People that are inspired, and you inspire by connecting the vision of the leader to the aspirational needs, the higher aspirations of the stakeholders. That's how we inspire. Okay, so that's the next emotion. Now, let's say you have 1,000 people showing up to they want to help you to to make your business successful or create a small transformational change in your community. The leader needs to be able to coordinate effective action. You need to bring them together. They need to work together. So collaboration is important, effective collaboration, but effective collaboration takes trust. Trust
Mm,
is the emotion
right.
that drives effective collaboration. I would say this is one of the most complex emotions that I ever have studied. I've practiced it for almost all my life as a people manager, as a project manager, as an entrepreneur, intrapreneur, and so on. I would say investing in trust is a well invested time. Now, trust itself has multiple dimensions. It's like, do I care? Do I trust that the leader cares that I'm following or supporting? Do I trust that the
Mm,
leader means what he says? If he does he really mean this is a vision? If he blurts out a vision, does he really mean he's committed to it or she is committed to it? Right? Is the leader reliable? Is he going to today say, yeah, this is what we're pursuing, but next day he leaves it, quits, whatever. So if I follow that person, and so on. So there's multiple dimension, and the leader needs to be very knowledgeable and being capable of, and the emotion of trust. Learning that helps you to create collaboration. And now you can have set a wonderful plan and wonderful vision and everything. And we have experienced all with the pandemic, with the war in the Ukraine, sadly, things happen in life and in the environment, in the economy, and in the world, and we experience setbacks, we experience adversities. Now in those situations a leader needs to be resilient, her or himself, but also foster resiliency in the people he or she is leading. Okay, so resiliency, according to research and in my practical experience too, is fueled by positivity. Now, positivity is not a single emotion, it's a palette of emotions. I lumped it together, but it is a wonderful pool of emotions that can help you in any kind of difficult situation in life to have available to you. I went through last couple of years through a very severe grieving of loss of people close to me, and I was able to tap into different sources of positive to arouse positive emotions, balancing out the craving, so craving a little bit every day, but also
mhm.
tapping into those positive emotions. And they made me resilient. They allowed me to continue to work with my clients, to finish my book, to be a good member of my family and a good friend, and so on. So I'm just explaining this is how the seven come together and how they build on each other.
I'm that there's so much insight and work in that, Reiner. You have done your homework. It's just amazing. I'd like to just name them now individually. You've got empathy,
Yes.
you have compassion, you have, was it understanding, or
Interest,
maybe,
it would be
maybe,
the emotion that drives. Mhm.
so maybe just name them, and so we can have them all just named right
Yeah.
here.
Empathy, compassion, interest, optimism, inspiration, trust, and then the palette of emotions, of positive emotions, which
Positive.
examples would be joy, awe, hope, just a few to mention a few.
Right. Yes, I could see where those are also very powerful. And my thought goes back to when you started and said we have 250 emotions. And I'm thinking, no wonder we're all messed up. It's like, and that's
It's a
just the tip of the iceberg. That's why we need this training, is because our emotions can run wild, as we all know, and it really does make a difference, like you said, if you know the core work of what it takes. As you said, you had a lot of things happen in the last 2 years, but to balance that with something positive in your case, if you weren't aware of that kind of work, um, you know, that's why a lot of people today are so lost, because there has been so many changes. But this is so powerful. It goes to me, it goes beyond leadership. It really is something that we all need to understand in our lives, because it would help us start from within how to lead ourselves. Because I believe that leadership starts with ourselves, and then we can go to lead others. So I see it as a tool for everyone. Thank you so much for all that insight. So the idea that you can change your emotions is new for many people, and you just told us that story, that example. Um, can you share with our listeners how this is possible? Is it a mindset? Is it a meditation? Or is there just something of the awareness? Like you said, you knew how to do it because you felt that you needed to balance out that grieving with something positive.
Yeah, it's awareness. It's a combination of things. I actually, first of all, thank you for the question, because this is a very important question. I have to say that the sort of emotions for people, it's something that's not tangible. Actually, I think in the book I call it the intangible force, because people cannot grab it. They cannot. We have to find words to describe it, a feeling that we have. And I still experiment with new emotions. I discover a new emotion, and by naming that emotion, it suddenly I'm able to create a shift. I have had experiences. There's in the grieving process. To give you an example, there's in Germany we use two different words for that sadness, and one word that I expressed. I'd say sadness did not help me to get out of it, the grieving itself about the loss. But then I had this, if I translate it from the German, it was more like a cloudiness. The world was, I was looking like a curtain, like a cloudy curtain. Once I was able to express that in my German language, I was able to shift my emotion. So back to your question, I think allowing us to name our emotion, to describe it, to put language to it, which is very hard from a neuroscientific perspective, because there's no connection between the feelings, the emotions we have, and our rational brain. And so that makes it so hard. However, each of the emotions that we have, we can put words to it. Let's say, let me give you the example of resentment. If resentment is the emotion that is associated with that somebody hurt us, somebody did something, it's associated with a victimhood, that we feel like we have been treated unfairly. Let's say we expected a promotion at work and the boss promoted somebody else, but we all expected it. Maybe our own story, or maybe the boss said something. Yeah, you sometime you might get a promotion, so we're expecting it, and we see the boss promote somebody else and we are left out, so we feel resentment, right? And that, so I have that in the workplace quite frequently. That's a quite common emotion. So we can put words to it and say, oh, I feel resentment, and this is like I was treated unfairly. I feel like I'm treated unfairly, and I feel right now I want to make it right. Now our brain is ruminating over that unfairness and keeps us in the past. And back to the learning. So what can we learn? Sometimes we say resentment holds us in the past, right? So because of the mental energy it takes, learning what kind of steps we can take. So in this case, what I coach people is to move to acceptance first, which is another emotion, which acceptance in that case means I accept that it is an action that happened in the past, and because it happened in the past, I cannot change it. I can only change the future. Therefore, I accept it. I might still say, I don't like that this happened to me in the past, that this person did this to me, something that was not fair. So moving to that acceptance and not dwelling on it, not living in that emotion of resentment anymore, now suddenly opens up the future for us, and we can move to more future oriented emotions such as hope, optimism, anticipation. These are all future excitement, future-oriented emotions, and suddenly things open up for us. So that's an example of a shift. We can learn it. We can learn it by reading about it. We can learn it by observing ourselves. I think that there's, in the book, I have many practices, like in terms of self-awareness, like becoming aware of our feeling, how we feel physically, because emotions show up in different part of the body, right? Like if we, let's say, we have heartache, we call it heartache, right? It's kind of, we have a loss where maybe we know from teenager years when love went away and unfulfilled, and we feel
Right.
heartache. We feel it actually close to the heart, right? Saying, "Oh, I have heartache. Ah, that's a loss," and it tells me that I valued that person.
Right. Yeah, that's it's energy in motion, our emotions, but you're right. It's letting go that creates the space for us to move forward. Um, and unfortunately, a lot of humans like to dwell in the past. There's even sayings, that people have created because we do like to hang on to that anger or the fear. And that creates, or that requires a lot of emotional intelligence, is to just understand what is that doing for you. It's doing nothing. It's actually holding you back from growing. Living in the past does no service. But
Yeah,
yes,
I
you're.
think this, if I might add to that,
Yeah.
Jane, is because this might be helpful for some of the listeners. There is some information in that feeling about that emotion that relates to the past. There's also positive emotions about the past, like nostalgia, right? That's kind of
Right.
I feel that a lot because of my childhood, how I grew up on a
Hmm.
farm, and nostalgic, and how wonderful that feeling was of community and family. So but if you just get stuck in it, you cannot move forward. If you
Right.
But there's some valuable information in that. So for example, nostalgia tells me about, let's say, my childhood, and I enjoying a meal with the large family around the large farm table, saying I value that community, I value family. And so then it gives me the information. Since I value that, how can I create it going forward? So I always create with friends, I recreate, and with family, I recreate that feeling here in the United States, where my new home now, uh, as an example. So it's not always, if we don't get stuck there, if we have the awareness and understand what is it about this emotion, and then we can shift.
Right. Absolutely. Yes. I love the idea of recreating it as well when it's a good emotion. Yeah. That's beautiful. I love that. We all need to hold on to those good memories and those good feelings, and recreate them when and where we can. So many of us over the past few years, as you have shared your own stories, have been in survival mode. So, how do you become a visionary leader, particularly during these challenging times? Because we've experienced a lot. You were just mentioning holding on to the past, but yet we know we need to move forward, especially if we're going to be leaders or we are leaders. So how do we, what that challenging these challenging times, how do we become visionary leaders? How can we shift that emotion, or give us some ideas of how that would work?
Yeah, so let me describe a scenario that leaders that, and that had happened to me many times as well. So I include myself as well, and the leaders that I coach. I give you an example that I believe that's in the book too. I coach also and work with indigenous leaders, and I use that example because especially communities that are especially hard hit to any measure of well-being in society in terms of health issues, mental health issues, economic issues, unemployment, youth suicide. Everything is more magnified in terms of that. And when I started working with indigenous leaders, I had to learn how to become aware of that this is it's a different situation. And so for me, I had to practice empathy and compassion, and I needed really to practice what I'm teaching, to put myself into the shoes of those leaders. What are they dealing with every day? Now here I learned that, and there's one story in the book, it's about Chairman Hart from the Ute Mountain tribe in Colorado. That's a tribe that has been living there for over 2,000 years. And they experience all what I just described. The average life expectancy is 55 years. There is huge health issues, diabetes, obesity. There's the divorce rate, dropout in schools, the drug issues, and so on and so on. That they asked me to help them to create a new vision and a new plan and strategy for their community to transform their community. And so many years ago, I got engaged, and what I experienced there, it was that I had to help to create an emotional shift, because that, for example, Chairman Hart, and he would admit that today, he shared with me many times that experience, how he was feeling at that moment. The needs of the day, the putting out fires every day. Let's say that again, somebody died in the community. Again, somebody committed suicide. Again, we have somebody put in jail, like a young person that or drop out of school. There's somebody that lost their home, and things like that. So all these issues that doesn't allow a leader to even take time to think. So in this case, I was taking them into an exercise. Now, a leader can do that same for him or herself, but can also ask others for help. I took them into a visioning exercise. I took them out of the environment, or they took themselves out of the environment. I suggested let's do a retreat or a workshop with the key leaders that want to create a vision. And I use then visioning exercises to, like, if you could dream big, like, let's talk about the issues, let's put them aside. We understand the issues, but not like, if you could dream, if you had a magic wand and we wish anything would happen, what would it be for? Now, in this case, it was all about the future of their tribe and the future of their children, saying our children are dying and our tribe is going to die. We don't have a future, but we want a future. We aspire to have a future. Now, you saw my shift in smiling from seriousness to smiling. That shift, there was a physical, a somatic shift, also creating an internal emotional shift. So we went in as a team, and one was a graphical facilitator, a friend of mine. She was basically, she was drawing the vision on the wall. Now, Native American people, indigenous people are less people of the written word. They're more of visual people. And they said this was powerful to see our vision unfold over 2 or 3 days. And we saw these wonderful images of how the future will look like, created that inner shift. Chairman Hart always described it like I was like walking in a valley where I could not see far. I could only see the mountains around me. I had to walk up to that mountain that I could see further. Again, a metaphor, an image, a vision of something that helps. So creating that shift with whatever is helps to create that shift for that leader to get out of that valley is very important.
Right. It's a combination of imagination and the power of vision, and putting it, like, even if you are someone who understands the written word and is ignited by that, photographs, pictures, paintings are much more, they resonate with the human much more. We we um we calculate, or we interpret pictures faster than we do words, and it's almost, it reminded me of vision boarding, in the modern world, so to speak. By putting that up there, they could feel the reality of it, and seeing it made them know that it was possible. Yeah,
Yes,
that was, I could see how powerful that would be.
it became more real. It became more
Yes.
real, and so I mean, for any leader, and there might be like corporate leaders here, entrepreneurs, and so on in everyday life, really taking times for self care, and what I do really, I learned over the pandemic, over the 2 years, and also having two losses. Uh, I start not at 8 o'clock in the morning, right, diving into the issues of the day and the things that come at me. I take a couple of hours for self care, journaling, walking in nature,
Mm,
reflecting, meditating, and that prepares me for the day. I'm now able to, the people that I work with, that I coach or facilitate change with, also in my writing, in my speaking, and so on, allows me to be at a much higher level, uh, away from, because the issues are still there. I'm not saying I'm ignoring them. I'm fully aware
right.
of all the challenges, but I'm not getting absorbed by them on a daily basis.
Yes, absolutely. That is so vital. That is so vital to give ourselves space, to allow ourselves to. We need to ground ourselves first. That's why I say I believe leadership begins with ourselves, and self care is so vital for our vitality. It's we're not machines, and unfortunately, that's where a lot of us have gone because the machines are working fast. They've made us work faster. So it's, I spoke with a friend once, and she said she went on holiday and she had her phone with her, and she was so annoyed because she said, Jane, I was never off. I was always on my phone looking at my emails. People were asking me questions, and she made up her mind then that she would never take her phone or her computer with her again on holiday, because she said I didn't have a
Yeah.
holiday because there was no downtime. In Aspire, you discuss the importance of cultivating trust. And you've talked a little bit about that in the seven elements, or essence elements that we need. What are some of the most effective ways to do this, particularly at a time when so many people struggle to trust their leaders?
Wow. That is a big question, and an important question. This is
Yeah.
really, I think, the essence of our relationships, in our personal life, in our professional life, in our public life. Trust is very essential. I, I have a story in the book that really moved me. And I'm using this story because this was a story that started out with extreme distrust. There were Mikhail Gorbachev, the leader of the Soviet Union, and Helmut Kohl, who was the chancellor of Germany at the time when the wall came down. And then Kohl had the vision of reunification. He thought it was not clear if Germany would be allowed to reunify, if this would be at all possible. What's going to happen is maybe turning into a civil war, two countries, whatever. But anyway, so Kohl had that vision of, this was his lifelong vision of reunification, and and Gorbachev, the two leaders didn't even know each other. They knew each other they knew about each other, but Gorbachev refused to meet Kohl because Kohl had insulted him publicly. This was before the fall of the wall, in an interview he gave in the Western media, comparing him with Goebbels. And then also Gorbachev, who was a child in his hometown village, which was occupied by German troops and ransacked by German troops, and his father was wounded fighting against the German invaders. Really, there was all the reasons not to trust the Western leader, the West German leader, Kohl. And Kohl had expressed publicly that he just didn't trust Gorbachev. So they started off with a very rough past. Now, Cole had this vision, this kind of really an aspirational, higher aspirational vision, and he said, "I have to do something. I cannot not do that. I need to." For him, it was clear, in order to work together to make this happen, I need to build trust. And so he apologized. It took a year. He sent the apology with the president of West Germany, which is more like a formal role, but not governing. But the president delivered, Weizsäcker delivered an official apology, which opened the door for first meeting. And in that first meeting, Kohl made very important moves. He connected with Mikhail Gorbachev. He's at a human to human level, going back to their childhood, saying, I understand, I learned what you went through. And I want to tell you that I also had some loss in the war, and I suffered through the war. I lost my brother. You almost lost your father. And so that way, he connected at a human to human level. He didn't look at him as a leader of the Soviet Union, which at that moment was more an adverse type of partnership, and he connected at a human to human level. I have in my leadership roles, I managed quite a number of large and global teams, different people from different countries, people that didn't know each other at first, and they came to me with complaints about the other through misunderstandings or not. They didn't trust each other. So I always made an effort to bring them together physically in once a quarter for retreat somewhere in the world, because I had to invest that time and money to build trust so that they could collaborate. Our business could not have been successful if those people could not collaborate, and the essence or the driver of that was trust. So Kohl, then back to him and Gorbachev, they had then a series of meetings. The next meeting after Moscow was then in Germany. There was a long visit with 3 or 4 meetings, some official and also very private meetings in Helmut Kohl's home, where they, hours over a home cooked meal, discussed their personal things, and they discussed about their vision. They learned about how much each other cared. They cared about the same things. They cared about the people's well-being in their country. They found out they had a similar vision about Europe, how a unified Europe. Even Gorbachev had the vision that the Soviet Union eventually, with Russia, could become part of a unified Europe sometime in the future. So with time, they got to know each other better in terms of what do I care about. I trust that you care about your vision and the integrity of your vision, but also your capability as a leader to take our agreement home and make it happen at home, and also about your reliability, that you would actually do what you say repeatedly and so on. And so in that long time frame, multiple years, they built the trust that eventually sealed the deal of the reunification. Gorbachev eventually in 1990 in the summer signed the reunification agreement from Soviet Union agreeing to it, and even allowing West Germany or Germany to be part of NATO, which was a big surprise.
Yeah.
That was built on
Common.
trust.
Absolutely. It's interesting. From the beginning of your story, what struck me was finding commonality. We share so much as humans. There, like you said, he went back and he's told his story, that he had suffered losses, and he understood that his father almost died. The war was something that they shared, and it was a common thing that they shared, and that's where the trust started to grow, because he saw him first as a human being, like you said, not as a leader. Like they weren't there banging heads with what I want for my country and what I want for mine. And when they had dinner in their homes, that also brought it more to the human level. And that is so interesting. I find that you're right. That helps build trust when we understand that we're all human. We all have a lot in common, and how can we bring ourselves together to trust each other, that we're all here for the common good, right? And therein lies the word
Yeah.
common. Yeah, so that's really
Yeah.
interesting. That was a great story. So, Reiner, before we go, what do you hope your book Aspire can give to readers?
I really, my hope is and wish is that I inspire people to create change no matter where they are. To your listeners, if you have an area that you're dissatisfied with, maybe for a long time, an area you deeply care about, it might be a relationship in your family, in your circle of friends, it might be maybe something bigger in your community, maybe even something of global dimension. No matter what it is, believe that you can create change, you can be a change agent, but you don't have to do it alone. And the seven emotions and leadership behaviors in Aspire, practicing them will lead to that. You can change always one person, but you can also increase that circle of influence that you're having step by step, so that I have people that expand their circle of influence from a few people to thousands. So you can do that too. And that's my hope for this book, for you listeners.
Well, thank you so much for that and all of your incredible information. I know there is so much here to unpack, and we could probably go on for another hour, but please do, to our listeners, purchase a copy of Aspire. I have got my own copy right here, and I am just totally enjoying it. And it's wonderful, too, as I was telling Reiner earlier. So much is in story form, which really helps you put all of this work into perspective and resonate. It brings it right home. So, to ask you an open question, what are you most excited about in your life right now?
Right now, I'm most excited about the possibilities we have, despite all the challenges that the world. We have so much. I would say people that want to create positive change. So I see myself as a piece of it, a person of a larger movement, and I want to make my contribution. And I'm excited that I'm still healthy and I can do that. And I have the aspiration, the inspiration, and some of the tools and the possibilities of collaborating on that large goal.
Yes, I'm with you there. I am very excited about things that we are learning. We've got there's so much going on in the world that is good, that is happening, that people are coming together and collaborating. One of them is this platform. But this is where I interview so many individuals, and there is so much good that's happening, and it's all exciting. It's very exciting. Things are growing and being invented, et cetera, et cetera. One last question I have for you, because we're here on the Epic Vision Zone. If your life were an epic story, what would the title be?
That's a wonderful question. The word that came to mind was an emotion, and that is hope. But hope for all the people that are out there, for all beings. Actually, I would include not just human beings, but all beings.
Beautiful. Hope for all beings. That's a beautiful title. Isn't that interesting that emotion came to you? That's really interesting. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for that, Reiner. And that's one of the questions I ask every speaker, because I love to hear their answers, and it really does it triggers their imagination, and also it hopefully, like you said, makes them think to their bigger vision. So thank you again for joining us here, and be sure to check out Reiner's website at reinerlomb.com, and his book Aspire, 7 Essential Emotions to Leading Positive Change No Matter Where You Are. And you can find his contact information also on the Epic Vision Zone bio page. Be sure to follow me on Instagram at Jane Applegath, and check out how you can become an epic entrepreneur at janeapplegath.com, where you can also download your free keys to your dreams. This is the Epic Vision Zone, transforming your dream into epic success.